All right. Hello, it's just me today to talk about malware on the blockchain. And it's Friday, October 17, 2025. So I'll start with the that story there. Um, yes. Yeah. So nation state attackers, at least one from North Korea, is now sticking malware on the blockchain, and this is one way to achieve bulletproof hosting. Now, the article here doesn't have enough details about exactly how they do this, but certainly they are quite correct that you could put malware encoded some way on the blockchain, and there it would be up there permanently. And I'm wondering if a good defense against this might be to just block access to blockchains in corporate networks. Um, I think just like Tor exit points, you could argue that blockchains are probably not valuable for any business purpose, and you probably don't want anybody at your company accessing cryptocurrency transactions unless it's actually part of your business. Anyway, we'll see what comes of it, but they're certainly right that this is a good way to host something where it does not live on any particular server and there's no way to have a takedown notice or anything. So it's pretty clever. Let's see. I got a couple AI stories are interesting. So Tor, as you probably know, makes a special browser to connect to the Tor network. And the way they do it is they take the open source Firefox browser and modify it. And what they did was removed all the AI features from Firefox, among other things, to increase the security and privacy of it. And I think this is very wise. I just got back from Wild West Hacking Fest, where there were half the conference or more seemed to be about AI security, and everybody had saying the same thing I've been saying is that AI is very dangerous, very insecure. And adding AI agents is very dangerous because it's easy for them to get tricked by indirect prompt injection into doing things that you don't intend. And in the same spirit, Reddit has deployed AI to produce answers inside the Reddit discussions, and the moderators are not allowed to turn it off. And it is pretty terrible. Like when people complain about pain, it suggests they try heroin. And this is only to be expected because all the AI does is repeat things it finds in its source data and doesn't have any sense. So it doesn't understand, doesn't have any common sense to add to it. And as I talked about in previous podcasts, and medical issues, even a tiny fraction, like 10 parts per million of false medical data is enough to change how AIs recommend medical things. So, Reddit, I'm sure, is full of comments that are unwise medical advice. So if you train and use that as your source data, then it's going to give you low quality answers frequently. In politics, the No Kings rally is coming up on Saturday. I highly encourage everybody to go participate and protest if you disapprove of the government. And I think a lot of Americans disapprove of our current government. And you can tell it's very effective because all the Republicans have identical talking points, all the Republican leaders calling it a hate America pro Hamas gathering. So they wouldn't be throwing mud at it unless they knew it was important and they were resisting it. And I just probably everybody knows the famous Gandhi quote, which I think is exactly right. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. That's how it works when you do nonviolent protest. And so they're moving from laughing at us to fighting us. And that's good. And as long as we remain comical and amusing and harmless and nonviolent, like the people wearing inflatable duck costumes and stuff, I think that's very wise. You have to be non-threatening and appealing so people can tell that the thugs like ICE that they send out there to beat you up are not going to do it. Of course, I don't think anybody's going to get beat up at my protest, or probably any of these, but they probably will have right-wing provocateurs out there trying to stir up trouble. That's happened in the past. Anyway, um, so there's an interesting article from Europe. It came from Catalin Kimpanu, is where I saw it. So the FBI wanted to stop. Now, as you probably know, I talk about it a lot in my classes. In Russia, hackers attack America and they have complete immunity. Putin says, we will not punish you. We will protect you from foreign law enforcement as long as you don't attack people in Russia and you just attack people we don't like America. You can just hack. You can even openly advertise. You'll hack for money, services. You can totally just hack those companies. You couldn't care less. From his point of view, this is basically like the privateers. In various wars, people would just authorize people to just go become informal soldiers, and you'd be allowed to attack our enemy. We don't care who you are or what ship you use, or go attack our enemy, loot their ship, steal their stuff. As long as you're hurting our enemy, that's fine. And that's his position. So America doesn't like that. And so the FBI has been trying to get people in Russia. And what they've been doing, apparently, is illegally hacking into the Russian servers and dumping their data and not covering their tracks very well, pretending to be an insider when in fact everyone can tell it's an English speaker, not a Russian speaker writing the articles. So European law enforcement is very upset about this because they want to actually prosecute people. And if you gain your data by illegal means, then you can't use it in court. And they say they're ruining our court cases. So apparently the FBI has gone to the dark side, not bothering to obey the law anymore in Europe, and the European law enforcement is not happy with that. And here's a bit of politics. So the Miami is testing a self-driving police car that can launch drones. So that's interesting, and it does sort of move towards the sort of Terminator RoboCop stuff where you have these robotic things, and RoboCop, I guess, was technically a human in the movie, but you could have these Terminator type police things flying around, attacking people, arresting people, with apparently no human in the loop. So they're just testing it now, but it makes you wonder under what circumstances would you use that? Anyway, in information security, well, I got most of my stories. There's Mother Jones has a big article, very interesting, about the surveillance empire. I've talked about this a lot. The Pegasus, maybe from the NSO group, is one of these. There's a bunch of uh, Israeli and from other nations, there's a bunch of companies that take military cyber weapons and repurpose them and sell them for other uses. And they typically sell them to government and military in various countries, and often they sell them to oppressive dictatorial regimes that use it to target the political activists and their political opponents and track down people and execute them and stuff, which is how they tend to get banned and shut down, which happened to NSO. And these guys sent reporters to a gathering of people that manufacture the spyware and talked to them undercover, pretending to be a dangerous nation buying it. And they talked about how they just do a little end around so you can buy it. There's a company called First WAP, seems to be the new one. First WAP has European founders and executives, and they built a phone tracking empire with a footprint extending from the Vatican to the Middle East to Silicon Valley. So they just seem to be the latest replacement of the NSO group, the people selling really dangerous phone tracking software, apparently to everybody with no regard for ethics or anything. So it's a branch of the arms trade uh, with all the similar problems. Velociraptor is an important instant response tool. I use it in my instant response classes. It lets you remote control your machines from a central point in order to gather evidence to investigate intrusions, and therefore it is used now by attackers. Attackers have repurchased it. They took the Velociraptor agent, which is just one of the many remote control agents, and they're using deploying it on machines, and they found a version of Velociraptor with a privilege escalation vulnerability, so they can actually escalate to system privileges on the machines. So this doesn't mean necessarily there's anything wrong with Velociraptor. The same thing's true of TeamViewer or any other remote control client. Bad guys will use it. Um, but since they are using it, Velociraptor is aware this would happen, and on their own site, Rapid7 provides indicators of compromise, showing you how to detect unauthorized Velociraptor usage. So they do try to make it easy, which is what most legitimate companies do. They realize when they make a product that it could be used by criminals, and they try to help you detect and prevent that. Of course, it's an open source product. So in principle, the criminals could modify it to remove those indicators of compromise. But of course, I imagine most of them won't. There's a group I didn't know about called Privacy is Sexy with a lot of scripts to improve the privacy of your operating system. There are scripts there to stop the various ways it tracks and reports on your actions back to servers. And it also has a script to block Windows 11 updates, which is something a lot of people would like. I would like it for my malware analysis machines. Updates in virtual machines just tend to be a waste of time. But anyway, that's an interesting site. And Frack, the famous, highly technical hacking magazine, has been around for at least 20 years, I think. They published an article about they somehow found out that South Korea was being hacked. And they tried to notify them, notified all kinds of government agencies. And then they got a mysterious email from a Proton Mail account from somebody who knew stuff that they'd sent in that report. So some kind of whistleblower inside the South Korean government was sending them email telling them Proton Mail is not secure. And then Proton Mail shut down that whistleblower's account and they shut down the Frack reporter's account, saying, you're just bringing trouble. You're getting your service in trouble here. So that seems sort of cowardly and nasty of Proton Mail. Um, Although I'm sure whenever anything suspicious comes, they just assume everybody involved is a criminal. And then there were data center fires to wipe out the data, and there was a mysterious so-called suicide, somebody falling out a window in I think falling out a window in South Korea. And then 2 months later, South Korea admitted they'd been hacked. So there's been some kind of serious hack inside South Korea and a whole attempt to cover it up and a lot of nastiness. It does sound like classic James Bond type espionage, probably from North Korea, you would think. And just like all whistleblowers, Frack found out about it and but couldn't get anybody to care or respond, which I'm very used to. I do this all the time. My mobile device hacking class, I found another bunch of vulnerabilities and reported them. And I cynically told my students, I'm just waiting 30 days for them to finish ignoring me before this stuff goes public. One of them actually patched something. That surprised me. Out of about 20 I reported. So that's more than usual. Usually nobody cares. Anyway, so I've heard a lot about these Myanmar scam cities. And they're run apparently by Chinese leaders, which I guess are organized crime leaders. They take people, they send them to Myanmar. They're basically slaves. They're forced to work there. They're beaten if they don't work. They don't have a passport. They can't escape. And they are making phone calls to trick people into giving up their money, trick Americans at romance scams and other scams. And there was supposedly a crackdown earlier this year, but they're booming and building new centers. It's still growing, still expanding. And I think we all know this. I must get about 5 calls a day from obvious criminals. Funny how ineffective they are. Whenever I get a call, I answer it and there's nobody on the line. There's a pause of like 20 seconds. Then there's a characteristic beep. It's the same people. And they're using some kind of foolish system that is incredibly easy to spot. So I know immediately they're the same bunch of crooks. Anyway, I guess they're making a lot of money off it. The criminal uh, enterprise is expanding, and the government crackdown does not seem to be effective yet. And they're using Starlink. They did get kicked off internet service providers, so now they have compounds with Starlink dishes on it. So the U.S. Congress is investigating and, of course, trying to put pressure on Elon Musk to try to get him to deny service to them. So I would imagine he'll do that. But who knows? Elon Musk is kind of a crazy guy. This is a pretty good idea. If you have a Google account, you can get locked out of it pretty easily. And now you can specify in advance that there are some friends you trust. And so if I get locked out of my Google account, you can send a recovery key to my friend to get me back in. This is a pretty good idea. I'm thinking of doing it, telling a few of my friends to be my emergency contact to restore my Google accounts. That would be nice. This is a good idea because it's been a problem for at least 30 years on the internet. If you have a free account on any of these services like Facebook or Google, and you somehow get locked out of your account, you're hosed. You can never get anybody on the phone. Nobody will fix it. Since it's free, nobody cares. You lose all your content. Nobody cares. You can just make a new account, is their opinion, and they can't be wasting any money having anybody look into anything, unless you have a personal contact or you can manage to hit the press or something. You can never get any action out of these guys for a free account. And I understand that from a financial point of view. You didn't pay for service, so they have no obligation to continue to provide you service or to be fair or to respect your content or anything like that. It's a free product. So if anything goes wrong, they don't care. And why should they? So this is good. Have another way to recover your stuff. Visual Studio Code has extensions, and a bunch of people have been publishing their private access tokens in a public XML file or some file, configuration file. And so Wiz Research found a whole bunch of these. And that means, of course, anybody can compromise the supply chain using that key. So that's interesting. This is one of the many, many supply chain attacks I've been talking about for the last 2 years. You trust people that give you software, but you shouldn't because the supply chain can be compromised many ways. And this is when they make it really easy by just accidentally publicly publishing the access token. So anybody that understands it can use that to put an unauthorized update in there. Um, and the last one here is Cisco. Cisco old routers, old switches have an SNMP flaw. SNMP is a protocol used to manage network devices, and it's been notoriously insecure because it's very old. Originally, it had no encryption or authorization, and there are newer versions that are better. But anyway, Cisco had an SNMP flaw, and this was in Cisco iOS and iOS XE, and it could lead to remote code execution. And so it is being used to plant rootkits on the device, which give it a UDP controller that can listen on any port, and all it can delete logs, bypass access control lists, and so on, hide running configuration items, reset timestamps. So this is much more detail about another thing I've been talking about for the last year or two. Now, the number one way people get into networks is by hacking the edge devices, VPN concentrators, switches, routers, firewalls. Those things are the number one thing that get attacked and taken over. And here's a much more detailed description of how they get in and what they put on there. So, and still, there's nothing much in the way of security for those edge devices, which really needs to change. We really need to have antivirus and integrity checks and everything on those end devices so it's harder to infect them. But so far, nobody seems to be doing that. Anyway, that's it for this one. I'll have another one on Tuesday.